originally from London, and I took the opportunity, said yes, and then I've been living here for 3.5 years, originally in Orange County and now in LA.
Good. Well, that's awesome. So you moved here. What got you like interested in starting investing in real estate?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been interested in investing in real estate. My father in the UK is a real estate guy, buys properties, develops them, rents them out, has a relatively large portfolio. So I've always been interested in that. And when I was in the UK, I was looking at some properties over there.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I finally moved here, I started looking at the different markets you've got in the US.
Right.
And it was in particular during COVID where I decided, okay, now's the time. I've got some capital. I want to invest it in real estate, and then I started looking all over, really, to actually find a good location to invest in. I originally started looking in California, which quickly told me this is not the place to invest in. I was actually under contract on a house in the Valley, an expensive house, which would have been a terrible idea because I rocked out most of my capital and it wouldn't have cash flowed. It would have been an appreciation play.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, I did some research and I looked at Tampa in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually flew out there a few times. I was sort of under contract a few times. But each time I did my deal analysis, it was showing me that it still wouldn't cash flow. And while Tampa's a very hotly appreciating market, I would have to mostly wait, until mostly the next cycle until you see a return, because I was thinking buying at the top in this market with which the prices are so high, you're going to have to really wait until it comes down again and then goes up again.
Right.
So that's why I then sort of moved away from Tampa, and then I landed on Gary. And I can talk about that in a bit. But why real estate? It's for me, it's the passive element of it. Once you have your systems in place, once you have a property manager in place, it really is. At least from my experience with my 2 properties so far, it kind of runs by itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked that element of it. And obviously there's, multiple cash flows from it. You've got the appreciation play, you've got the appreciation, you've got the cash flow from the rent, you've got the tax benefits. So that's why real estate. And then ultimately I landed on Gary, which I can talk about in a bit. That's something that attracted me to investing in real estate, and I want to be able to build my portfolio out. Just like yourself.
Yeah, all right. So you moved to the U.S. with your consulting company down into California, and you decide, because your dad did real estate, you're like, all right, I want to do real estate myself. And so you start looking around here in the U.S., and you decided to land on Gary. Cool. Have you had any bad experiences out there yet? Anything bad happen? Evictions? Any problems?
I haven't. So I bought my first property about 8 months ago, an off-market property.
It was off-market?
Yeah. So
how'd you find it?
Yeah, so there's a Facebook group called Indiana Real Estate Investors Group.
I'm a part of it too.
Yeah, and that's been really good. So initially, when I landed on Gary, which I actually found about Gary on TikTok, believe it or not, I found a lot of real estate TikTokers, and there's a channel, a guy who runs under the name with Invest with Ace.
Oh yeah, I know that guy.
Really good. And he started talking about Gary, and then I did a lot of research into the city, and I learned about the history of it, learned about the infrastructure that is still there for ultimately a big city. I mean, there's an international airport.
Right.
I looked at sort of the local government with them knocking down houses. I flew to Gary to actually check it out myself. So I knew this is an area that I was interested in because there's the potential appreciation, which I've already seen in my property. The first property that I had, it's already gone up, a relatively significant amount. And then you've also got the cash flow play. So that's why Gary. So I then looked at agents, and I reached out to agents, had buyer's agents. But at least from my experience so far, the buyer's agent haven't been able to do anything that I can't do myself, from just going to Zillow, finding a property, doing my own analysis, and then typically I would reach out to the seller's agent who would be more willing to work with me, because obviously
to double dip. Yeah,
exactly, which is what happened on my second deal. So after I had an agent, they were sending me properties. I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to work. I then looked on Facebook, and I joined the group, and I was on that group every single day. And a wholesaler called Eric posted a deal, He wanted 50,000 for a 2 bed, 1 bath in Gary, perfect condition. Already had a renter in the property, so I called him. I've learned about the property. I flew to the property myself to actually see it, and it actually ended up closing at 45,000 because we had the inspection done. I was able to, get it down a little bit, and I paid all cash for that.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, so that was my first property, and at some point I can refinance. From my knowledge and research, it's worth 70.
I was gonna say, I'd imagine 65 to 70 somewhere in there. What's it rent for?
900. So
yeah, I think you could get 70.
Yeah, and it's Section 8 as well. So originally, originally when I took it over, there was a Section 8 renter in, and they were paying 600. But I knew, having spoken to my property manager and looking at the fair market rents, there's essentially a Section 8. The HUD have a website where you can actually see the rents that are paid for different zip codes within Gary. 600 was well below, and the previous owner had basically had this tenant in for 11 years and never even bothered to go back to Section 8 and asked to get a rent increase. So once I took under the property, I then went with my property manager to essentially put in an application to Section 8 to increase the rents, and they did to $900, which is, it's fantastic.
Yeah, good cash flow.
Yeah, it's great cash flow, especially when you have a mortgage. So it's just money each month. So there's a part of me that actually doesn't want to take out, pull my money out of it just yet, because thankfully I don't need that cash. Ultimately, in time when I'm out of cash or when I need more cash, I can pull the equity out of that. But in the meantime, I'm happy just to let it keep appreciating, let this about it more, and I can just get that, $700-600 a month cash flow from that.
Right.
So that was my first property, and that worked very smoothly. The tenant's been great. She's lived there for 11 years. She doesn't ask for anything. Keeps the place in great condition. She was happy to pay a little bit more once, obviously, the rent increased. And I've had no issues. I have no maintenance so far in 8 months. I have a property manager. They take 10%. So that was really my first property. Yeah, it's been great.
And your your property manager is Vilgor, you said?
Vilgor property manager. Yeah.
Who's what's the name of the owner? Do you know his name?
Sarah is the name of the owner. And she works with another guy. I've forgotten his name. They run it as a couple. And when I flew to Gary, I actually met them because the first agent I was going to work with, before anything, I said, "Do you have a property manager?" And they referred me to Vilgor. And I met them, and they've been good. They've been good. A bit slow to respond to emails and stuff like that, but they've been good. And I haven't had any experience so far where I did have one small expense of $56. This was actually day 2 of me owning my first property in Gary. My tenant called me, said the heating's not working. I was thinking, oh great, here we go. The boiler's gone, whatever. So I called my property manager. They went round, and I was waiting for that $5,000 bill, and they sent me a $58 bill of a new thermostat with no time and labor. So I thought, okay, that's good. I mean, they could have charged me anything, and they just replaced, they just replaced the thermostats. And since then, I haven't had anything. So far so good. And I'm actually using Vilgard again on my second property. So 3-4 weeks ago, I closed on a property for $65,000 in sort of West Gary, 3-bed, 1-bath, brick bill, good condition. The bank appraised it for 77 during the so this one's financed, and I'm using Vilgard to essentially update the property in terms of the cosmetics, doing some painting, finishing the floors, putting in some doors, and they're gonna essentially get the property ready and then rent it out. But I'm also at the same time getting another quote actually from Prestige. So they're going to give me a quote on what they think it is to small rehab of the house, and then I can just essentially compare and then choose from there.
Yeah, you should always do multiple quotes. Even the property management companies that are good, sometimes their contractors that they're using get a little questionable. So for instance, I just had to redo a roof. My first bid was $9,000, and then my second bid was $6,000, and then the first guy heard about the second guy and offered $55,000, and then the second guy offered $53,000. Wow. So I got it from $9,000 all the way down to $5,300 to completely redo the roof, and the roof was terrible. But Get bids. Let them know you're getting different bids, and then
Yeah.
show them the bids and be like, "Can you beat it?" Because you would be
Yeah.
amazed at how
And
much money you can save.
are you finding the contractors that you're working with, are they just contractors that you know directly, or they
No,
work on property management company?
they're from the property management company. So my property manager. So on this one is my other. I have two property management companies. One of them has been a little rocky, and so I was like, I'm going to see if I can find a better one. So then I tried Prestige, and Prestige Property Management has been great. I've only had them for like 6 months, but no problems. Very responsive, communicative, no issues. So if they continue to do well, I'll probably put more properties with them. I haven't had to do a remodel with them yet, so I don't know what their remodel repair type service is like. The first property management company, not very responsive. It's hard to get a hold of them. It's kind of a pain. But I've had to do repairs with them, and I've had good experiences. The repairs get done in a timely manner. They're, what they say it's going to cost is what it costs, and the contractors they use, they've been able to get stuff bidded down to reasonable rates. I've done a few repairs and remodels with them, so it's like I've got something that's all right. Can I do better? Yes or no? If I can, and Prestige seems to be pretty good so far, I may switch over there. But I'm hesitant to recommend anybody to the first company because some of the issues that they have.
Other than, I mean, that issue which you mentioned in terms of being slow to respond, that is something that I experienced with Valga. It can sometimes take 3 or 4 days to get a response from an email, and that concerns me because ultimately, when I build up my portfolio and it gets bigger and bigger, I can't always be on top of like all the issues, right? You need them to be able to do that. But at the flip side of that, as you said, they've been good in repairs and maintenance, and at least the quote they've given me for this remodel seems in line. I actually checked it with the original guy who wholesaled me my first deal. He's a very nice guy. I gave him a call and told him some of the prices, and he said, "Yeah, that's pretty accurate." So I trust him on that front. But there's also that sort of, I know they've got 1,000 properties, so there's that big. Then I understand, and you've got a very small team. I understand there's some scaling issues essentially.
Delays in the communication because you're busy.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the repairs and maintenance been like with a Prestige?
I've had zero, nothing, no issues.
No
Yeah,
issue.
I got the tenant in there, and I've had nothing. It just, the rent comes every month, just like it's supposed to, at the exact amount that I think it's supposed to come. So, and they were recommended to me by some other folks that I know, and a few other people in my investment group have used them, and I haven't heard any problems.
So I have a question for you. How have you been finding your houses? Have you always used an agent, or are you finding any off market?
Yeah, I get it all over the place. So, I got my first one was from a turnkey provider, the Olsen Group. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I actually I believe I think you mentioned them in one of your videos. I reached out to them and had a call with them. And they've been sending me some properties. My only concern is the properties that at least I've seen is they're selling beautifully remodeled houses in sort of the Etna area at sort of a 120 or 130 price range, which I'm not sure how well that's going to work in terms of, I feel like a lot of the equity and value has already been built into that deal, right? And
exactly.
So it's going to be, that's more of a just, it's going to cash flow. It might cash flow $100 a month, getting 12 or 1,300, and then you're sort of hoping with the appreciation. So while the sort of product is, I'd love to just get a beautifully remodeled turnkey.
It won't cash flow.
But and that's what why invest in Gary if it's not going to cash flow.
Right. 2 to 3 years ago, every house they sent out on their list was priced between $40,000 and $70,000. Over the last 2 to 3 years, more and more people have come into the area. Natural appreciations happen because of the economy, what's going on with that. And their prices have gone up and up and up and up. And so my first one I bought from them was for $60,000, a 3-bed, 1-bath, newly remodeled. And then it just was like, I can find better deals myself, so why use them? It's not that they did a bad job for me. They did a great job. I just don't think that the numbers make sense anymore. Maybe they will again in the future. I don't know. So first one was from them. Second one, real estate agent. I found it on the MLS. $52,000 house, 3-bed, 1-bath, newly remodeled. So no brainer. Got that one right off the MLS. Then I picked up 2 more Let's see here.
You had
Another
access to the MLS through
the real
an
estate agent. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just use a real estate agent. I go on realtor.com myself and I look every day. And then she, of course, looks on the MLS. Sometimes she sends me properties that I haven't seen. I think she sent me that one that I ended up buying. Then I picked up two more. And one of them was a seller finance deal. And that was my property manager manages for other people. One of the guys she manages for was selling 50 of his houses. So he released an Excel spreadsheet. My mentor, Mark, myself, some other guys in our group, we got a hold of it. I picked up 2. Mark picked up like 15. Caleb picked up 7 of them. And so we just bought that whole list. And it's been good and bad. The houses were really, really cheap, but they got a lot of problems. And so like the roof that I just replaced was from one of those. Now I got it seller financing, so it was $89,000 for a duplex. That's probably worth $130 or $140. So I got it way under market, but I've had to do some repairs and stuff like that. I still got it at a great deal. But it has had some issues. And then the seller financing aspect of it is really nice. 20% down, 5% interest rate, but he only amortized over 15 years, which hurts your cash flow a little bit, but my cash flow is still great. So I got that one. Then I bought another one off the.
What does each one rent out for?
So we got a Section 8 tenant in one side for $950. The other side is a pre-existing tenant who was at $650. We told her we would keep her, but she's gonna have to pay $750 a month. So it's up to her if she wants to. So when her lease is up in June, she's gonna decide whether to stay or go. If she goes, then I'll take it to Section 8 and get $950 aside.
Right.
So which is essentially $1,900 a month.
Wow.
For an $89,000 property. That's the 2% rule.
Yeah.
So it's a good deal.
Are they updated inside? What do they look like inside?
One side is brand new, updated when I bought it. The other side is not. It's rental quality, but it's not bad. It's just laminate and stuff like that. I'm sure it'll cost me $1,500 to get it looking gorgeous, painted and everything again. But and I might put in like $5,000 and redo the floors just so it looks tip top shape and then I'm redoing the roof but $950 aside for Section 8. That's pretty for that area. That's pretty good. And then after that, I did another single family home right off the MLS with that same real estate agent. I bought that one. That was a 3-bed, 1-bath. That's the one Prestige manages, and that was purchased at $70,000. But it rents for $1,050 a month. So it's bringing in good rents. It still cash flows really well, And then I just am about to close next week on a property in Chicago. It's all the way on the east-south side of Chicago, which is the bad part of Chicago, but it's in a certain neighborhood that a friend of mine who's been on my channel, his name's Dominic. He has 53 rentals in that area. All of them Section 8. He buys them for 60 to 80 grand. Remodels them. Now they're worth 100 to 120. They all rent out for 1,300 to 1,500. He does a cash out refi, gets all his money back, does it again.
Is that in Indiana? No,
that one's in Chicago. It's right on the border. Like you can see the state line from the neighborhood pretty much.
Okay.
So it's real close.
Investing in Illinois is like with the taxes and the laws there. I've heard it's like a landlord's nightmare from what I'm not too experienced with that. It's just what I've heard.
That was my reason for why I would never invest there either. Didn't want to, especially because they got very favorable eviction laws for tenants. And so when I went to Indiana and met with Dominic and I toured his properties, and he owns 53 of them. He's a blue collar guy. He's a teacher. He's a history teacher in like high school. And he was like, yeah, the trick is you use Section 8 because if you have problems with Section 8 tenants, Section 8 takes care of it. You don't have to, like, if you do have to evict someone, it still is on you to evict them. But the Section 8 program, if they violate their contract, they're kicked out of the program for 5 years. So they have a huge incentive to be on their best behavior. And Section 8 does their own background checks and things like that. So at the end of the day, I was like, all right, I'm going to take his advice. I'll try it. I'll try one house. And if it works out well for me, then maybe I'll buy more. And if it doesn't, well, then I got one house that's a pain. And if I have to, do something later, like sell it or something, then I will. But I don't anticipate that being the case. But we'll see. I'm willing to experiment a little bit and, see if I can find something better. And if it bites me, then, I guess I get bit.
I mean, I'm now considering for the second property whether I want to fill it with Section 8 tenant or not. And I so far I love the idea of Section 8. You know, you have this huge leverage over them, whereas if they do mess up the property, then they lose their housing. I love the guaranteed element of it.
Yeah.
I've only got one Section 8 tenant so far, but they've been great. So I love the idea of that. I'm just working with a property manager. I'm not sure if it's sort of, if you go to your property manager and say, hey, fill it with a Section 8 tenant, is that going to take longer to fill?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, the housing is an issue everywhere. There's Section 8 tenants all over the place, especially in lower income places like Gary, like Chicago. You know, my property manager was able to find a good Section 8 tenant within just a couple weeks. And Dominic, the guy who has 53 rentals, all with Section 8, he says that he doesn't have any problems. So I think it's actually harder to find a regular tenant. So, but again, that's just me speaking off of his experience, not my own personal experience. But maybe I'm just hopeful.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on the state of the market right now, Gary? Are you still actively buying? Are you finding good deals? And you said you use a mix of different sources for those properties. You know, how are you finding that at the moment?
So I mean, like, I wish I had more money to just buy every house I saw that I liked. But I pretty much have to take it one at a time. I'm in the middle of this transaction. Once I get it repaired, remodeled, and refinanced, then I'll look again. So I pretty consistently, I would say on average, I buy one every three and a half months. I probably, over the 2 years, I picked up 6 of them now. So that's like every 3 or 4 months. But very good friends of mine, a couple of guys that I work with, I got started in the area, who have now also bought 4 houses in the combined 4 houses in the last year. So I'm always talking to people who are buying. And then my investment group itself, my mentor, my friends, I mean, we bought 70, 80 houses in the last 2.5 years. I definitely see prices are coming down a little bit. They went up, and now if you go on Realtor.com, you see a lot of price reduced by $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I think that's going to continue because as interest rates go up, every other investor is having the same problem. Because interest rates have gone from 3 to 6 or 4 to 7, your cash flow is being impacted. It's an extra $100 a month to own the property. Well, if you can't cash flow $250 a month or more, and instead you're only cash flowing $125, nobody wants to deal with a mess. So people are making offers. The one that I got in Chicago, listed for 67, I offered 62.5, got it. Now it was all cash, and that's usually what happens with all cash. You get a better price, as you experienced. The one that I bought in November of last year before the interest rates started rising, listed at 76. They dropped it to 73. I offered 65 financing. They said, we'll take 70, and I said deal. And then I got $1,000 knocked off an inspection and got it for 69. So I've seen this trend, kind of prices softening a little bit in our market. I don't even know if I want to say necessarily softening, because I think people were just, it had started to go up, and then people decided to try to ask for more, and they never got to there, and then they had to come back.
I've seen that.
So, I would say 3-bedroom, 1-bath houses, 1,000 square foot, Gary, Indiana, you should be trying to pay between $60,000 and like $75,000, maybe $80,000.
All in?
Like the asking price. By the time you're done with like your closing costs and stuff, you're probably adding a couple thousand more onto it. But,
yeah.
But
yeah,
that's for a remodeled house too. Like if it needs work, it needs to be down at like $40,000 or $50,000.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. This property that I just got, they were originally asking 78, and I went in at 70 and got them down to 65 during the inspection.
That's pretty good.
It's going to cost me, I think it's 6,000 or 7,000 to get it ready. So I'll be good for 71 or 72. Yeah, and then part of me is thinking, once this is financed, put 25% down. I'll put another, 6 or 7K into it. The bank already appraised it at 78, and that's buying it at 65 before the work. So let's say it's at 85, 90, maybe cash out refi. Once I've done that work, I don't know if it's worth it, but that's something I'm considering doing. Once I've completed that job.
Yeah, I like the cash out refinance model because you get your money back, which means you can recycle it. I don't know how much money you make in your normal job. If you're doing a consulting business, you're probably doing pretty good for yourself, and maybe you have access to more cash to go buy properties. But the cash out refinance model is nice because I can just use the same $60,000 over and over again. And
do you have and I haven't been to a cash out refi, would you have the same closing costs? So on the loan that I just got for this second property in Gary, closing costs were 3K, something like that.
Yeah,
It's going to be another 3K.
Yeah.
It's going to be another.
Yeah. So even when you cash out refinance, so best case scenario, maybe you make money. Like 2 years ago, when you would do a cash out refinance after you remodeled it, because interest rates were so low, oftentimes you actually got paid to do it. Like you bought it at 40, you put in 10 or 15, and then you cashed out at 65. You actually got some money back extra. And then it kind of broke even at zero, and now maybe you end up leaving a couple thousand in the deal, which isn't the end of the world, because if you just do traditional financing or all in cash, that's money you had to put into the deal anyway. So if I cash out refinance and get 95% of my money back, and I leave $5,000 in the deal, that's not a loss for me right there. That's not bad at all. So, but yeah, you still have to get it appraised. It'll have to be appraised again. You don't need to get it inspected because you just remodeled it. So you have an appraisal, but you still have your loan origination fees and all that type of bull crap. So, but it's usually not that bad. Like you said, $3,000 in closing costs. That's really not terrible in my opinion. If you do it out here in Washington, or probably in California too, where it's way more expensive, dude, closing costs on a house out here are $10,000-$15,000. So by the time you get your appraisal, your inspection, and everything done.
Yeah. Have you ever had a maybe bad experience is the worst, but have you ever gone to cash out refi and not got what you thought you would have?
No, this is actually my first time that I'm doing it. My mentor's done it a few times, so have some of the other guys. None of them have ever had a problem. And I don't think that I'll have that problem because the appraisals, if you do your work ahead of time, you should know what the property's going to appraise for. If you've been in the market long enough and you know enough of these properties, I mean, I can look at my own houses and be like, here's one that's, I know I got 5 houses that are all worth right here. So if you're going to say it should be less than this, why? Why is it not the same? The problem will be if you do a cash out refinance now is that your interest rate's going to be so much higher that your monthly payment will be more. So the only thing that I could do to ameliorate that situation is to leave more money in the deal so I have a smaller monthly payment. So then if I leave more money in the deal, I don't get as much back. I'm not really worried about it not appraising right. I'm more worried about the interest rates just affecting the cash flow. And then leaving more money in it to mitigate that situation and then not getting all my money back.
Have you invested in any of these? I mean, it sounds like you've just invested in Gary and now Chicago. Have you looked at Hammond's and the places nearby?
Hammond's really nice. My friend, so the two friends I was telling you about I work with, one of them bought 2 houses in Hammond. And $150,000 house rents for $1,500 a month. So there's the 1% rule, which I'm not a huge fan of that rule. But it cash flows not quite as good as Gary, but it's a nicer house in a nicer area. I mean, it's so nice. Like I would live there, he would live there. It's a nicer area. Yeah. And I think that's not a bad idea because, like, I'm willing to be so much more involved in what I'm doing. I mean, having conversations like this, talking to people all the time, like I'm very involved. So I'm willing to learn Gary and the unique problems that Gary has. Like the guys I work with, dude, they just want to not think about it. They don't want to think about it. So I was like, look, buy in Hammond. It doesn't cash flow quite as well, but nicer tenant, nicer area, less problems, less headache. Just buy it, set it, and forget it. Because that's what they want to do. I wouldn't recommend they go to Gary because Gary, you need to manage it a little bit more. You need to actively be making sure bad stuff is not necessarily happening.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm looking. I would love to be able to get a fourplex in. I mean, the reason why I hadn't looked at multifamilies in Gary is because I was told early on by my agent that the multifamily product, and it sounds like in your case maybe not, but the multifamily product isn't as attractive for tenants in Gary because you can pay $900 to live in a duplex, or you can pay $900 to live in a single-family home. So the actual product itself isn't as in demand, I would suppose. But again, it sounds like for you, I mean, that duplex you have for $89, that's a fantastic deal. If I could get something like that, probably not now, but.
I mean, I closed on that one in November of last year, so it wasn't that long ago, but it was off market. But if your agent makes a good point. But at the same time, okay, so instead of getting $900 aside for my single family, like $900 for my single family home, that cost me $80,000. What if I get a duplex for $120, but I'm only getting $700 aside? Well, at the end of the day, you're getting like $1,400 for that 120 as opposed to $900 for an $80,000 purchase. So like mathematically, you're paying less per door and still getting more money for it, in my opinion.
His point was that the demand to like the actually filling it with tenants as a tenant, you can pay the same amount to live in a duplex or a single family is 800-900. So his point was you can have more vacancies.
Right. I have not had a property manager tell me or anyone I know that they were struggling to fill a property because they couldn't get interest in it. With the exception of like, oh, this unit's coming up vacant in December and it's Christmas, that happens no matter what type of property you have. It's hard to fill stuff in the middle of winter and especially right around Christmas. I haven't had that problem with my duplex, and I haven't heard of anybody else who owns a multifamily that had that problem. So if that was that agent's experience, it sounds like he's a trustworthy guy. Maybe it was. But I mean, you can always drop the rental price $50 a month, and guess what? You get a lot of interested people. Yeah. And on a duplex, you can afford to drop it because you got 2 units that are paying you way more than that single family would. You know what I mean? If instead of $950, I went to $850, well, I'd still make $1,700 a month for a $90,000 property. Instead of $900 a month for an $80,000 property or $60,000, So I think it was worth it, but we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the numbers. I mean even that 906, 650. I think you said you're getting right now. Yeah, it's fantastic. And you compare that to pretty much every other market, it's unheard of. So that's why I love Gary. I mean, and even with the prices coming down. Doesn't really matter, does it? Because the cash flow is so good, we can wait it out. So that's why I'm, that's why I do love Gary and I want to continue to invest there.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, the city will benefit from it. The more people, they got issues in that city. Corruption, city is not taken care of the way it should be. Neighborhood by neighborhood, one neighborhood could just be all burnt out and terrible. The next neighborhood could look good. And I think the more investors, the better, because those people will actually pay their property taxes. And if the city actually gets property taxes, maybe they can start cleaning it up a little bit. So, which is what I would hope to see. That, and like you said, it's set up to be a big city. Has tons of manufacturing all over that's just abandoned. If some company moves in there and sees that opportunity, like they got low taxes in Indiana, there's a lot of opportunity. The Hard Rock Casino set up in there in the last year and a half. Amazon opened up a distribution center. If they get like 1 or 2 more big companies, you could all of a sudden see a big push.
I mean, it's a beautiful. I actually visited that Hard Rock when I was there, and
did you?
Yeah. It's I bought the first box. It's like let's have some fun.
May as well.
And it was it's very strange because it's just this beautiful building in the middle of not such beautiful area. It's like a Vegas casino in there. It's huge.
Yeah.
Brand new shiny lights. It's very odd, but it shows you if as you said, they wouldn't build there if they didn't have good foresight.
Right.
So I'm a glass half full sort of person. So the hope is it continues to develop.
Yeah, I would say that if these giant companies are willing to take a risk, I'm sure they've got teams of lawyers and analysts and economists looking at it. And if they came to the conclusion that there's some potential, who am I to argue with them?
So at this early stage, any advice you give to me? When you compare yourself to where you had just closed your second and you were looking to get your third and fourth, I mean, I'm sure you've learned a lot. I've followed your videos, which are very insightful.
Thank you. The best advice that I could give you would probably be, as cliche as it sounds, networking. The more people you know, the better. So you're part of One Indiana Facebook group, and I've been meaning to start my own Northwest Indiana Facebook group for a while here. I probably should. I know enough people. But I would say, the more people you know, the better. My mentor has a YouTube channel. He makes videos every day. Most of the time it's about real estate. Sometimes it's about random stuff. But he is like one of those people who everyone around him becomes successful. Like everybody in his life, like all 15 of us in our investment group, are because he kept pestering us about stuff. And that's how we met people. That's how we met each other. That's how deals happen. So you want to find more deals than just on the MLS. The way you do that is networking. Property managers, Adrian with Prestige Management, he does his own turnkeys and his own flip properties. So the more people you talk to and let them know what you're looking for, the more times stuff's gonna all of a sudden get texted to you, and it'll be off market, and you'll be like, dang, this is good. Are they potentially interested in seller financing? And sometimes you can get those, and those are the best of the best. So I would say network, look for off market deals, hopefully seller financing, and then don't get caught up in the whole, I want to get 4 this year. Dude, if you can't find 4, don't buy a bad deal just because you want it. Yeah. Just be like, just keep waiting. Or keep making offers that are under, and eventually someone will just take it, you know?
So what is your investment group? What does that consist of? Like, what do you just meet up on a periodic basis and talk?
None of us, I have not met any of them in person. We literally I met Mark online. I got interviewed on a YouTube channel, and he watched it and messaged me 4 years ago. And he was a cop, I'm a cop, and so we chatted about that. And then he was investing in Gary, kept telling me I should try it, and I gave in, and I did. And then he also was talking to his 2 sons, and his 2 sons had some friends in the military. And now our investment group is literally Mark's former police friends, his sons, and his sons' military friends. So there's like 15 of us. Most of them have met each other at some point. I've never met any of them. And so then it's me and my one friend here named Darius, who's one of the guys I work with. The other guy's not in the group, but that's how we got in it. But like my mentor, if you watch his YouTube channels, he's not very popular. He only has a couple hundred subscribers. But so like if you comment on his videos, he'll respond to you. He'll give you his email. You can chat with him whenever he would do a Zoom call like this. He would actually interview you and have you on his channel because he likes to do that type of stuff. And then once you become close enough friends with him, yeah, you probably get invited into the group. That's happened with a few different people. But it's a good group to be a part of because, like I said, there's always at least 3 or 4 people actively buying a deal today. And so you can get, what are the current rates you're doing? What are the current projects you're working on? What type of bids are you getting for roofs? And it's just a real good metric that you can gauge whether or not you're getting ripped off on. That's why when I give advice to people, I'm like, your property manager is your most important person that works for you. But the most important people you know are the other investors in the market. Because when you're like, does this sound expensive? You ask them. And they either tell you, yeah, that's what I paid, or dude, you're getting ripped off. And then you figure out how to not get ripped off.
Yeah, no, that's very valuable. That's very valuable. What's his name?
It's I'll send it to you. I'll send you a link to his YouTube channel. His name is Mark, and his YouTube channel is called Mazkey Finance. But I'll send you a link to it right now. But yeah, he's a real good dude. He's just an old school guy. He's in his 50s. Makes videos about a bunch of different things. He's an accredited investor, net worth over $1 million. So he also invests in like oil and mineral rights. But most of what he does is on real estate. He owns 25 rentals. All of them are in, I think almost all of them are in Gary. Maybe he owns more than that now. He owns 25 to 30 rentals, and almost all of them are in Gary. The more people you know, the better. Because like everything in life is about who you know. Opportunities come that way.
Exactly.
So.